Great. So we're going to start off with the eggless sweet dough or the short crust dough first. To start this, I'm going to mix in the castor sugar with the flour. Now we are using refined flour here. If you want to substitute it with some atta or with some ragi flour, you can substitute 20% of this flour with any alternative flour. 80% will always remain the refined flour. Now I'm going to add in butter into this to do the rub-in technique. Now rubbing in is basically rubbing the fat and the sugar, fat and the flour and the sugar all together. Now for that, the fat should be really cold, chopped into small pieces like this, so it's easy for you to rub in with your hands. Using the heat of your hands, you're going to kind of rub in, melt the butter slightly, and make sure it adheres to the dry ingredients like this. Keep mashing them into the flour like that, so you can literally see it. It is not that difficult to do. It is, in fact, by this technique, what you achieve is you achieve a shorter crumb. So when you get the final product, the product will be slightly more crumbly and not very elastic or not very hard to eat. It's going to be more brittle and more easy to, literally very crumbly. When you, the moment you bite into it, it'll just crumble. That's the texture that we're trying to achieve here. So you're just crumbling it with your fingers like this, just just mixing the flour, sugar and the butter together. Now this is a very simple technique. We are using castor sugar here. If you want to replace it with some other sugar, like for example, if you want to do it with brown sugar and if you want to do it with jaggery powder, you can replace it as well. But it will obviously change the color and the taste of the product. So that's entirely up to you. I'm going to take a little bit of time on this. I'm going to do it gently. I'm not going to hurry this up. In case you are using a machine bowl, you can use the machine bowl with the paddle attachment. That is going to give you a nice effect. And as you see this sandy texture developing, a lovely sandy texture that is developing here. Brilliant. So a nice sandy texture done. The next thing that's going to go in is the essence and the yogurt. I'm using plain yogurt here, store-bought, not set at home. This is a store-bought yogurt. Any brand will do, to be honest. I'm not using Greek yogurt, I'm just using a plain yogurt. I'm just going to mix it up with my fingers, and I'm going to make sure that it lumps up into a ball. That is called a combine. So I'm going to just going to combine the ingredients. If I need to at some point if I feel that this mixture is not coming together for any reason because it's hard or it's very stiff, I can put a little bit of water in it or a little bit of milk or a little bit of more yogurt in that. Once it comes together like this, this is done. So it will not stick to the bowl. You notice how clean the bowl has become. You notice how clean my hands have become. I'm just going to punch it down a little bit so that it becomes nice and supple. Do not overwork this dough, because this dough is not going to, it's not going to gain anything by you overworking it. It's only going to lose. So don't overwork the dough. We wrap it up and we'll put it inside the fridge for about an hour. The next step is we're going to do the eggless custard. Now to do the custard, we're using a sugar. We're going to make a sweet milk emulsion along with the custard powder. Now to start off with the custard powder, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dilute it, because if I add custard powder directly into hot milk, it's going to just curdle. So I don't want I don't want that to happen, and I don't want lumps to form. So I'm just going to make this into a diluted mixture, and I'm going to add it to the hot milk. Now one of the things you need to understand here is that I'm using full fat milk. So the thing with milk is that whenever you use milk, it takes a little bit of while to heat up. If there's less quantity in the pot, it will be faster. If there's more quantity, it will take more time. So really there's no time limit or any kind of a time restraint in this particular part of the custard making process. So don't really worry about the time too much. I know the camera angle is a little bit off, but once it heats up, now it's coming to a boil now. So you want it to come to a single boil, like a nice voracious boil. Once that happens, you will be adding in the diluted custard powder. Now basically custard powders are a mixture of vanilla powder, corn flour and color. So that's generally what it is. And when you add it in, it's going to give you a similar set like a corn flour. So when you add it in, always whisk it in like this. Continue whisking it in and add it in gradually. Don't use any other method. Like don't let this sit and dump all of it at one time. It's going to just form lumps. So keep gradually adding it in. Now I've done all this on top of a cold stove. I've not heated it up. Now I'm going to switch on the heat and I'm going to start to thicken this batter. Keep mixing. Please do not stop mixing. If your hand hurts, get someone to help you and continue whisking. Do not stop this, because this is sweet and this is definitely going to set very fast, because it's corn flour basically that's setting, and it sets at around 65 degrees Celsius. It starts to congeal at that temperature and it's going to really happen very fast. Keep mixing. If you need to take it off the heat, you can take it off the heat as well. There's no issue. If you need to switch off the heat, you can do that as well. If you're doing this on a gas, make sure it is on a low to medium flame. Now that has become nice and thick, nice and rich, nice and thick. You need to just, I've switched off the heat. I don't need the heat anymore. This is already done. So I'm going to add in the butter. I'm going to add the butter into this so that I can get some richness in this particular product. Without the butter, it's just going to be your regular custard, which is going to be very drab and very, dull. The butter is going to help magnify the flavors a little bit and, carry that flavor onto your palate very easily. So that's well mixed. What we're going to do is make sure the butter is completely gone, completely mixed and dissolved into this hot custard. You notice how nice and chunky this has become, but there are no lumps. We're going to just wrap this up. To wrap it is very simple. You just wrap it with a cling film. Make sure the cling film is touching the skin of the pastry cream. So this is known as a skin cling, so that the pastry cream does not form any skin of its own. We are giving it a skin of cling wrap. We're going to put another cling wrap on top of that and set this in the fridge for about an hour. Now we're going to start doing the shaping of the tart molds. To do the shaping of the tart molds, or to make the tart line the tart molds with this dough, I'm going to first soften this dough. So this has been sitting in the chiller for about an hour. It's gotten a little hard because there's butter in it, and butter tends to stiffen up in the fridge. So what you need to do is you just need to soften this up. So just massage it like that with hand. Once it's malleable, it's soft enough if it's soft enough to press down like that, then it's going to be easy for you to start to roll this out. Now I roll this with the help of butter paper. You can roll this on a stone surface as well, but I prefer butter paper because if I mess up, I can simply lift the butter paper, put it on a tray and put the tray in the fridge. Less mess, no headache. But now if you've got it on the surface like that and the surface becomes hot, it's going to stick and create a lot of mess. Now with butter paper, also one other thing you've got to understand is that butter paper also has a mind of its own. It's very it's very non-stick. It keeps sliding off the surface and off the table as well. So I tend to use a very heavy rolling pin to roll this out. The heavier the rolling pin, the easier it is for you. If you have this spring-loaded rolling pin like this, it's going to be less effort for the chef. And when you're rolling this out, I know the butter paper just acts a little different and it acts a little difficult sometimes. Just go with the flow. Start rolling it out gently, little by little. Do not try to roll it out all in one swift motion. Go gently, go little by little, and keep rotating the butter paper so that you can literally flatten this out like a chapati or like a flatbread. So you get a nice flat, roundish kind of a shape. If it looks a little weird like an amoeba or something like that, don't worry about it. It still is going to be useful for you. So make sure you roll it out really thin. So the kind of thickness that we're looking at in the start is about half a centimeter. So half a centimeter is like good enough. If you can roll it thinner than that, then you're a really good champ. But if you can't roll it that, at least half a centimeter, please try to roll it half a centimeter. Anything lesser than that is really welcome. Anything more than that will be too fat. This is almost done. So even if you feel that there's parts of it that are like there is like the middle is a little fat and the sides are a little thinner, you can roll it out again if you want. Now I'm using this particular fluted tart ring. Now this fluted tart ring, I'm going to place it like that and I'm going to cut 1 inch around the tart ring. So you see that gap I'm giving, that gap is basically for the side walls of the tart. So you notice what I'm doing is I'm just cutting it around like this. You can use another ring if you have concentric circle rings in your kitchen. If you don't have it, don't get stressed about it. Just do what I've done. Place your disposable bottom back inside the tart ring and make sure you lift it and put it. So you can use the rolling pin like this. That's a little flour. You can use a rolling pin like this. Gently lift it up on the rolling pin like that. Gentle does it. Perfect. Now you're going to slide this off gently over the arch in one swoop action. Done. Now what we're going to do is, it's as simple as that. I mean, what you're going to do now is you're going to get rid of all the obstacles from the table and start to place this dough into the tart tray. Now to do that, you need to just fly your hands a little bit, lift it like this and tuck it inside. Do not just press it down blindly with force. Pick it up and tuck it inside. That's very important. You need to pick it up and tuck it inside like this. Brilliant. Now just fly your hands a little bit, make it a little non-stick and start pressing the bottom corners. The bottom corners are very essential because that's what gives the definition to the tart. That's where the definition of the tart starts. You need to do the bottoms, then you need to do the sides. Now the sides are important as well because the sides are the ones that are going to cling to the ring, and that's basically when it bakes, that's going to contain filling inside. To remove the excess, you just place your butter paper on top like this and just using a rolling pin, just roll over the tart ring. Now doing this particular technique ensures that you get a rounded surface on top and all your sides are well rounded. You can choose to cut it with the help of a knife, but that might give you a jagged edge. This will ensure more that you get a nice rounded edge like that. Brilliant. Now whatever we have left over after this, we're going to make one more tart from this. So I've got two doughs. I'm using one. I made one ring. I've lined one ring with the one part of this first dough. I'm using the remaining part of this dough to line the other ring. Again, the same thickness is what you desire. Basically, half a centimeter is what you're looking at. If you can get it thinner than that, really kudos to you. That's amazing. If you can't do it, don't worry, don't get stressed. Simply, at least get to that stage. Use your dust flour that is required to make sure the product is non-stick and it's not sticking to your hand and to the butter paper and everything. So that's very important. You just need to make sure that you don't add too much of flour. Not like some people, they just dump a whole handful of flour there. Don't do that. Just add a little bit and dust excess off, because you don't want to eat uncooked maida. That's just criminal. You don't want to eat that. Now we're going to just flip this like a full jhatka method, like just quick. You got to, like, this is how chefs work in the kitchen, quick. And sometimes it doesn't land properly, no problem, but you're going to just ease it into the tart mold like that. So once you ease it in a tart mold, you basically get your sides in. Same thing, you tuck it in and you ensure that it's it's well located in the tart. It's it's not hanging out of the tart from any side and all that. Again, you start pressing the bottom corner down all round and then the sides. Yeah. So bottom corners all round. If you have a part of the tart ring which does not have any dough and you notice there's a big hole, gaping hole there, make sure you can take a little bit out and just graft it like this. So this is possible if you're doing tarts on the go and you're doing tarts in a hurry. You can do this method. Obviously, I don't recommend it because obviously it's not going to be a very professional finish. But yes, if you do get that problem, you can go ahead and do that as well. So when you're cutting this, one more thing you got to remember is you got to keep the blunt end of the knife to cut it and always on this angle. So it's one motion. It's the same motion. It's just the tart ring that keeps going round and round. You're just turning the tart ring. It's one motion. Your hand knife is almost stationary. Again, with the second dough, what you're doing is you're just going to roll this out. Again, the same kind of concept that you've done for the first one. You need to roll it out to half a centimeter thickness. Make sure you've got it. You've got sufficient amount of flour added to it. Also remember that when you're working with this, you need to work on a cold stone top. So if your stone top for some reason is very hot, or you've just made some bhaji or some kind of cooking on your stone top and it's really super hot and searing, make sure you take some ice and just just cool down your stone, because this dough needs to be kept cold. If it's going to be hot, it's going to be an absolute nightmare for you to work on this dough. So make sure you've got the cold stone top to work. Again, coming back to the dough, I've just floured the surface. I'm just going to flip it over like that. Make sure it releases from the butter paper like this. And we are going to start just dusting a little bit of flour and we're going to start to do the rings. Now the rings are a little different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place the rings on a silpat like that. Now because they are rings and don't have a bottom, the silpat is going to act like a bottom. So I press this ring into the dough and I've cut my round bottom. I've cut the round bottom of the sweet dough. So I've just placed it like that. You notice how it's placed there. I'm just going to tuck it in and just make sure it is nice and flat at the bottom. I take a portion out. Now I've cut a strip which is the thickness of the tart ring and I'm going to place it, I'm going to roll it up like that and unfurl the roll inside the tart ring like this. cut a little bit out. If you have a gap there, just take a little bit out like that and make sure you graft that gap as well. Now if you do this professionally, you can have a really long, you have a very proper and a very long sweet dough. So you roll it out in a very long fashion so that you can get one single strip to do this, and you don't have to do this grafting business. But even if you do it this way, I mean, as a beginner, there's no problem. Don't get stressed about it. At least start doing it. Again, press the bottoms, press the sides, make sure that they are nicely well placed against the ring, and they've got a nice finish like that. You need to ensure that when you're finishing this, please do not make the mistake of doing this halfway and then carrying on with some other work. Make sure you finish this off and completely with the excess taken away. To remove the excess is the same, but this time I can't turn the ring, because the ring is, it doesn't have a bottom. So I'm going to turn my hand and not the knife. So the angle is always the same. You notice that I try to keep the same angle. It's always like I'm taking off quarters of the round tart ring. I'm taking out quarters like that. Doing the second one as well. I'm just doing two to show you. I mean, I've shown you how to do the tart, do the fluted tart ring. Now you're seeing how to do the plain tart ring. So these tart rings are ideally very good for a la carte portions or for single serve portions. The other ones are very good for pastry shop portions. The next step is to dock this. Now you're docking this with a fork like that, making holes in the bottom, and just the bottom, not the sides. Primarily because you want to release the air, which or the carbon dioxide, which is emitted in this particular dough during the baking process. So if you don't do that, you will find lumps and pimples on top of this the surface. In order to even go one step ahead, what I'm doing is I'm placing a butter paper here, and I'm going to place baking beans on this. Now I'm placing the baking beans on this primarily because this is a tart shell which is going to bake blind. That it does not have a filling when it goes into the oven. It's going to have a filling after it is completely baked and just before consumption. So it's very important for you to place this in there like that, and make sure that these beans are, you can use any beans. I'm using the cheapest Watana bean that we get. It's really cheap, and it's easy for us to use this. You can use, even if you have baking beads, use baking beads as well, and they work perfectly fine. You can use any dry bean, any dry pulse, but remember that what you use here, you really can't use it for cooking and stuff like that. So it's, once it's used for this particular purpose, it's completely going to be used here itself. Now I'm using the butter paper so that this bean doesn't stick to the dough when it goes inside the oven. Now I'm going to put this into the oven to bake. If you are doing this professionally, you can even rest this in the fridge for approximately around an hour so that it stiffens up nicely, and then you can put it to bake. But since we are in a hurry for this particular session or this class, I'm going to put it to bake at 160 degrees Celsius for about 30 minutes. So these have been baked for about 30 minutes. So you notice the big one might require a little bit more time. I wanted to show you what it looks like. So most of these have been sitting in the oven at 160 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. You notice that this is nice and golden brown. It looks a little white in the camera, but it's nice and golden brown. You can see the small rings as well. Now this tray is pretty hot. I mean, just come out of the oven directly, and I'm going to take these beans off immediately because the beans carry heat. So if I leave the beans there, they're going to carry on cooking. So my tart rings are done. I'm going to start to do the pastry cream now. The eggless custard or the eggless pastry cream is basically this simple product that I made earlier. I'm going to soften it with the help of a spatula so that this is cold, been sitting in there for a while. So I'm going to just soften this up, and once it's nice and soft, I'm going to then add it into this. But before I go ahead with that, you notice that these bottoms of all these tarts should be nice and golden. So that's like a telltale sign that these are baked through and through. So I'm going to place this in a piping bag. The custard is in a piping bag. I'm going to leave that for a little later. What I'm going to do now is a little bit important for you all to understand. It's the next process is to make sure that we can brush this particular tart rings from the inside with melted dark chocolate compound. You can also use melted white chocolate compound if you prefer, or milk chocolate compound if you prefer, or if you're using couverture, you can also use a dark couverture or a white couverture. The reason I use this particular coating is because this acts like an impervious surface and gives you longer shelf life on the tart because the moment you put a like a soggy filling inside, the tart shell will start to imbibe the moisture from that soggy filling and starts getting soggy itself, and that's a big issue. So this by doing this, I'm going to get a little bit of life into the dough. So you just saw the tart which I've got as an excess tart. I don't need to use it for this particular thing, so I'm going to keep it on the side. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to fill it up. So you're filling it up in this fashion. I know the camera angle is a little off, but what you're doing is you're just filling it in a round fashion. So you're just filling it round like that. So what you're doing is just filling it round like this. So you start off from the outside, then the inside, and then the center. So that's how you fill this up. A lot of times, some chefs, what they do is they tend to use a palette knife to smoothen the top surface as well. I mean, it's not really required in this particular thing because I'm going to arrange the fruits to cover the entire filling. But you need to ensure that the filling is sufficient. If the filling is less for any reason, then it's going to be really dry. The fruit tart is going to be really off. And one of the biggest problems with the fruit tart is if you don't fill it properly. So you notice that this is filled properly, and I'm going to start peeling my mangoes. So I'm just peeling off the mangoes. Now mangoes again in this season are a little difficult to work with. It's monsoon season here in Goa at this point, and the moment they get into monsoon, it gets a little difficult to work with this particular product. Now with mangoes, what happens is I prefer to use Alfonso mangoes. Alfonso mango is always easier to work with. Even if they get a little squishy, don't worry, you can still use them. I mean, as long as they can hold their shape, they're still usable. The parts that you cannot use, please discard. You don't need, if you can't, if it's something that you can't use, just discard it. Make sure you peel your kiwis. Now we've got a super green kiwi here. I mean, it can't get any more greener than this. There are some kiwis which are very light green in color. You have washed grapes. Now with these grapes, the biggest problem with globe grapes is that they've got really big, huge seeds inside. So you got to cut them in half like that, and make sure you remove those seeds. Those seeds are a real detriment for your product, because anyone who's eating this product, the moment they put the grape in the mouth and they get a huge seed, it's going to put them off really. It's really very distracting. So you don't want it to toy with the overall taste of your particular tart. Now you've taken off all the seeds. After this, you're going to take out the fruit. So I'm just going to take the other fruit I'm going to use is a papaya. Now I'm going to use the back table to do the papaya because I don't want to dirty that table. So I'm just going to use a little to just take off. So make sure you take off all the seeds and you remove everything from the inside. Papaya is really easy and really tasty to work with. At the same time, you need to ensure that your papaya is ripe. If your papaya is for any reason not ripe, not going to happen. It's going to give you a very off taste. So these you can see are super orange. Make sure your knife is clean when you slice them like that, and then you arrange it. Now before you do any of this work, make sure that you washed your hands always. Like in the kitchen, we wash our hands like about 10 times. During this the making of this demo itself, we must have washed our hand about 3-4 times. So it's like for me, washing is like the moment I finish one job, I immediately go to wash my hands. So you got to arrange them very So we've arranged the papaya there, we've arranged the papaya here. So the papaya I'm putting first is because it's got this really orangish color, and I want to use that color. Leftovers you can use it for your fruit tarts and stuff like that. I mean, it's not necessary that you need to. So you got a different camera angle here. We're just going to. So what we're doing here is we're just going to cut the kiwi, and again place it on top. So there's no real particular way of doing this fruit tart. I mean, I'm just arranging it in this fashion because it's very neat and very organized, very military, if you may. But if you would like to arrange it in any other fashion, you can. I mean, there's no real. There isn't any particular way to arrange this. You can do it in any fashion you like. I'm just going to play with colors here, so I'm trying to play with the orange color, the green color, a little bit of this purplish color. So I'm trying to play with the color so that it looks very attractive to the eye. That's what fruit tarts are all about. They're nice and fresh, and they scream a lot of color. So it's very important for you to get the color intonations right. And you need to be able to have at least couple of colors on there. So just don't have one kind of fruit and put it on top. It might look a little boring unless it's like a unless it's like a mango. So that a mango always looks like the king of it looks beautiful on top of that, on top of a fruit tart. I mean, if you've got a mango, then great. But if you have any other fruit, I would recommend to have at least 2-3 kind of fruits on top. So it looks really nice and attractive. So cut your mangoes in. I'm cutting them a little thick for this particular tart because I want to mention something that if you are doing it very thin, the fruit tends to dry up faster. So when you're doing this in your homes, you can keep them a little on the thicker side, so ensure that the product remains nice and fresh. Now here again we've got this amazing finish here, where we've got this nice brilliant neutral gel that we're putting on top. So this is basically cold gel. It's store purchased cold gel that we're placing on top. To do the cold gel, all you need to do is take the gel and just beat it with a spoon, or just dilute it with some water and then just place it there. Now my tarts are done. If you don't want to use the cold gel, you just make sure that you just dust some icing sugar on top. That's going to give you a nice finish as well. These are done, brilliant, and don't they look inviting? And even with the sugars, even with the icing sugar, it looks really amazing. So real simple, folks. I mean, not very difficult to do. I don't think you guys are going to have a hard time doing this. It's very simple. Please do try it, and if you do it on your own, please tag us on your Instagram posts, on your Facebook posts. Look for us as Foodybreaks India or Foodybreaks. Thanks.